No? No takers? They don't want to. We are praying for the arrival of JT so that he can offer our prayer. But you're all waiting so patiently, and so I'm going to go ahead and start. Welcome, beloved community, to the annual Congregational Budget Meeting. Thank you for your presence here. I'm not sure it's ever meant more to us to be together today, and online as well. My name is Peg Burke, and along with Johanna Schussler, we are your co-moderators at Plymouth this year and next year. This co-moderator model is new, and in the 6 months that we have been doing this, it is working well. We are working well with our clergy, our staff, the deacons, and the leadership council, and all of the boards and committees, and we are confident that we can say to you, it is working well. And so is Plymouth's intentional interim time with Reverend J.T. Smiddendorf. But most of you have been to a service or both this morning, but before we begin the meeting, we want to acknowledge that this is a particularly dark time in Minneapolis and in our country. We are freshly grieving the tragic killing of Renee Nicole Macklin Good by ICE on Wednesday, just a few miles from here. And many in our community are living in fear as ICE continues their violent surge in our city. Yesterday, I, along with many of you, gathered with thousands of others in protest of these injustices.
Given these disturbing, urgent realities in our city and our nation, it may feel discordant or even unimportant to be sitting here in our sanctuary about to hold this meeting to approve Plymouth's 2026 budget. And this is vital work in the life of our congregation. As JT has reminded us, Plymouth's mission and margin are interdependent. Our budget supports our ability to fulfill our mission to embody the radical love and justice found in the life, teachings, and spirit of Jesus, and our church purpose to humbly seek and serve God within, among, and beyond ourselves. In these times, our church community's commitment to love and justice is needed more than ever.
The 2026 budget that Rick Simey and Mike McAllister will introduce today incorporates input from Plymouth's many boards and committees and is consistent with our commitment to the 5-year plan to reduce our annual draw on our endowment. That's okay, let's just wait. We are confident these are healthy and positive signs that our intentional interim time is producing the results we want as we continue to be faithful, patient, and focused on Plymouth's mission and margin.
As you will hear in a moment, this budget is the result of loving, thoughtful, collaborative discernment by Plymouth's clergy and lay leadership. We are grateful and inspired by the excellent collaborative work being done by so many of Plymouth's staff and lay leaders. We hope that you are experiencing that too, as you feel the positive, loving energy coming from leadership spaces and radiating throughout the congregation. At this time, I'd like to invite us into a spirit and a posture of prayer. invite you to feel yourself in this space, to find your breath in your body, to feel your neighbors surrounding you, and to invite Spirit into this space. Loving God, prepare our hearts as we enter into this time of congregational discernment of our 2026 budget. Please help us to be thoughtful and loving stewards of all that you offer. Amen.
At this time, I would like to call this meeting to order. The only item on the agenda is approving the 2026 budget. At this time, I would like to ask John Cairns, who is our acting parliamentarian, to verify that a quorum of 50 members is present.
There is a quorum present.
Thank you, John. JT is back, but we are already at the presentation by Mike McAllister, and Rick Simey will begin as chair of the BOFA committee. And for those of you who don't know, Mike is our treasurer and also a deacon. Welcome, and thank you, Rick.
Thank you. I've already been introduced. I'm Rick Simey. I have been on BOFA now. I'm in my 5th year, and this year chairing it. BOFA does many things, including dealing with financial issues on a regular basis, including every month reviewing financial status, etc. And we also deal with some personnel-related or policy issues. But today I want to focus more on what BOFA does and how it contributes to the budget. And this won't take very long. And I want to also mention a few names and offer some thanks to these folks. So we recommend the budget to the deacons after thoughtful consideration. There are many iterations typically of the budget, and it is then approved by the deacons, or they can also say, we don't like what you presented, and work some more on it, and eventually it ends up here. And it's in distilled fashion, and this distillation, as you see in the summary of the budget, are hours and work that's gone on for a long time. I want to highlight the people, I want to mention the people that are on BOFA. Gina Del Corazon is secretary of the board. Larry Brantz serves on the board. Kevin Walker, Gail Fugit, Don Schultz, Sue Moses, Matt Smith, and Andy Scow. Also at every budget or every BOFA meeting, but non-voting, are JT, pastor or lead pastor if it's not JT, David Langamo, our director of operations, and Mike McAllister, our effective treasurer. This year in particular, we have had a frequent guest serving as a consultant, and that's Ray Martin. You've heard his presentations, and we thank you, Ray, for that. Also deserving mention is Rose Swenson, who is serving in a comptroller role at all-in-one accounting with whom we contract. Within BOFA, or under the purview of BOFA, are several committees that I want to mention because they have to do with the generation of this budget. First off, Human Resources Committee is within BOFA. That is ably chaired by Nancy Gores. And Human Resources deals with things like looking at benefits, personnel, or human resource matters, et cetera, and provide input on things like salary adjustments, compensation comparisons, these sorts of things. Stewardship is within and under BOFA. Don Schultz is chair of the stewardship, and more particular, we also have a task force that was formed a year or so ago to look at financial stewardship issues, to include legacy giving, to include how do we correspond, how do we thank, how do we recognize donors, et cetera, in a timely fashion. And he's been the head of that task force. I'm not going to name all the wonderful people that serve on that, just in interest of time. And we recently completed the first Consecration Sunday, apparently in a long time. I guess there was a Consecration Sunday effort some in 2010 or someplace in a more remote history that I don't particularly know about because we've only been members since 2019. But that was headed up by Gail Fugit and Don Schultz, of course. There's an investment committee, and Larry Brantz serves as a liaison to that, and the chair of that is Jason Schussler. And these folks look after the investments in consultation with Wells Fargo, who manage these accounts, and keep us up to speed on what's going on with that. There's a facilities management committee, and this has been a very important group of folks in looking at what are the needs of our physical plant, of the grounds, et cetera. This is ably led by Matt Thomas, and the liaison is the other Matt, which is Matt Smith, who's on BOFA. 5-year plan work group. This is chaired by Kevin Walker. You have probably seen and heard Kevin several times as he talks about the state tax credit, housing tax credit, and how to look at that as one mechanism of double giving to benefit housing, but also to benefit this church if one so desires. Carrie Souter has also been a principal in that effort. But it goes beyond that. It's looking at ways to identify mission congruent organizations that might want to be part of our space, et cetera, and working in conjunction with David Langamo, JT, et cetera. It's an important group that is working within the BOFA. The other is a technology task force or work group that is chaired by Sue Moses. The importance of that, and it's reflected in the budget, is there comes a time in the life of any organization and in your households when a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old computer just doesn't make it anymore, right? So they've been looking at, in a systematic way, what do we need? What do we need to upgrade? Also looking at more than that, things like the safety concerns that involve technology of cameras and recording and these sorts of things. That's been a wonderful effort, and the fruit of that is reflected in some of the budget as to how we want to spend money to upgrade things that are necessary for the functioning of this church. And then Archives Committee, Tom Anderson being the archivist now, and Gail Fugit, our liaison to that. And just to mention again the wonderful gift that was given to us from the legacy of Doreen Bronze. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick. And thanks again to all the members, lay leaders, staff, volunteers, and people of every sort that have contributed to the effort that it takes to run Plymouth as an institution. So, as mentioned, my name is Mike McAllister. I'm currently serving as a deacon and as the treasurer, and I'm bringing to you today the fruits of all of that effort. As Rick mentioned, the budget was approved out of the Board of Finance and Administration, recommended to the deacons, who also considered it, and the deacons as well recommended that it be brought to the congregation. This is a new practice for us. In recent years, Plymouth shifted from a fiscal year that was aligned from July to June to a new fiscal year that aligns with our calendar year. And so last year, we had the same calendar year, fiscal year alignment. We wanted to pass a January budget a budget in January to carry us through the calendar year 25. But last year was challenging, and we didn't pass that budget until June. That said, we turned roughly right around and started work on the 2026 budget. And I am happy to report that we are able to bring that budget to you in a timely manner at the beginning of the calendar year instead of halfway through. Now, the materials that represent the budget have been posted with the notices for the meeting. The information has gone out. We've in emails and on the website, and we've held a couple of budget information sessions that were relatively well attended. And so, in those budget information sessions, I spent approximately an hour going through the details of the budget. I am not under the impression that today's audience is interested in a full hour-long recitation of the numbers and so forth. So my goal today is to be brief, not by a way of dissembling or avoidance, but just as a way to cut to the chase and give the attendees an opportunity to ask questions and to let us get to the natural conclusion of this activity. So with that in mind, we're bringing forward two budgets for consideration today. One is the operating budget, which covers the expenses of running the church. The operating budget is what we typically think of as the budget. It covers everything from paying our staff to keeping our lights on, to maintaining the building, and to carrying forth the ministries and activities of Plymouth Congregational Church. The capital budget is intended for capital expenses, and in Plymouth's terms, those are expenses that cost more than $20,000 and have an expected lifespan of more than 5 years. So those are bigger activities. Those are typically building-related projects for the most part. And in recent years, in the last couple of budgeting years, we've only brought forward an operating budget. One, largely because we didn't have the institutional capability. We didn't have the staff on hand. We didn't have the projects underway. We didn't have things prepared to execute on capital projects. I am very happy to report that with Plymouth's hiring of David Langamo as our Director of Operations, and with the strong kind of contributions from the Facilities Management Committee, that Plymouth has now carefully considered what projects we need to be investing in to maintain our physical plant that would meet those criteria of capital projects. And as a result, we are prepared today to bring forward a capital budget as well. So, in way of summary, going back to the operating budget, we have the operating budget materials that you've received propose a total revenue of about $2.3 million. Most of that revenue, $1.9 million of it, is made up of giving income. That's income, whether it's pledged or not pledged, income from members giving to Plymouth Church, or I shouldn't even say members, income from people giving to Plymouth Church, whether they're members or non-members. The estimates that went into that giving were done prior to two critical kind of milestones. They were done prior to the Consecration Sunday activity. They are also done prior to the completion of our giving year of 2025. So there's a little bit of uncertainty in those numbers, but after studying them in discussion with BOFA, we feel comfortable that the estimates that we've got are good. They're as good a basis as we can get. And so what we have penciled in is that $1.9 million on the giving side. The other major category of income in the budget is what we call other income, which is largely a matter of monies received by Plymouth as a result of from leases, from rentals, so leases are going to be spaces in the building. For example, the offices of Vocal Essence and the use of the building by Vocal Essence, leases used by the preschool in the education wing, leases used by the Groveland Food Shelf. Rentals and fees are going to be things like use of the theater space, use of other spaces in the building by events that are held here. And it could be as small as parking lot spaces, the signs you see in the parking lots about when a spot is reserved for use outside of Sundays. Those are compensated activities of Plymouth. One thing that's worth noting is that our income on the income generated, I'll say effectively by the building or by the use of our facilities, is significantly up this year. And that's a positive sign. It's largely due to the work of, I'll say the Director of Operations, David Langamo, in the form of negotiating, updating leases and the rates set for events with the help of other church staff like Cody Bordeaux, who's got expertise in the theater space. It's also a result of the 5-year plan working group, pushing lay leadership, church staff, all of us to think more imaginatively about what forms of income can the building drive. Because when we talk about this journey that we're on, trying to get to a more stable balance between the cost of running Plymouth and the income that we receive from members, one of the ways that we're striving to kind of strike that balance is to grow the income, not just from giving income, but from the income that this building can generate for us. So those are the two major numbers that go in on the income side, and as I mentioned, they represent a total of about $2.3 million. When I jump forward onto the expense side, the major number to think about is that the top line number is about $2.9 million in expense. If I take a step back from the detail there, the difference between those two numbers, 2.3 million on the income side versus 2.9 million on the expense side, the difference between those two is what we've classically referred to as the draw, right? The money has to come from someplace, and Plymouth is blessed in that we have significant resources that have been gifted by previous members for designated purposes or undesignated purposes. Those gifts have grown through the activities of the investment committee and through our management companies. And we are blessed that we are in a position where we can cover some of that gap between the income and the expense with monies drawn from our balances. Now that number, so just for simple math, we'll call it $600,000. That draw amount is the number that collectively within BOFA and within the deacons, a couple of years ago, back in '23, we made the commitment to reduce that number as a percent year over year to try to return it to a place where it's a comfortable, long-term, sustainable number. And so, as I think Peg mentioned, we're in the third year of that journey. The amount that the BOFA determined was suitable for that draw. Or sorry, the amount that we had set when we set that 5-year plan for this year was a 10% draw. And working with BOFA, we determined what the basis for that draw was. So how much of our savings would we consider available for that draw, and that those two things came together in the form of that this year's draw amount is $610,000. Now that's the number that we're working towards. At a high level, we've this year is as I mentioned, is 10% draw kind of target. Next year, we're working to reach a 6% draw. So we want to take another significant either step forward in income or step back in expenses in this coming year. So the work is not done, but it is underway, and we are making progress. In past years, we showed that draw amount as income. The budget materials that you received no longer do that. And that's after consultation with the Board of Finance, with consultation with our accountants, with kind of thinking about what is, when we call something income, that's really a movement from one bank balance to another, it can be confusing. And so we felt like this was a better way of showing that there's a gap between the income and the expenses. And the way that you would see that if you look at the budget materials that were distributed is it shows up as a bottom line figure. In past years, we showed the draw within the income section and the bottom line tallied to 0. Now we're showing the draw, now we're not showing a draw as income, we're showing the bottom line tallies to a negative number. And it should, right now it shows a $638,000 balance. Again, the materials make clear in kind of longer prose. The approved amount is $610,000, and it's within the Board of Finance and Administration working with the staff to meet that amount through the course of the year. Okay, so taking a step back into the expenses, roughly 60% of our expenses at Plymouth are to pay the staff that clean the buildings, that keep it safe, that deliver the sermons, that teach, that make music, that provide services, and in the course of, while the numbers move around a little bit, we have not made any changes in the course of this year in terms of the number of positions. So while you'll see some changes in staff, which areas things show up on which lines, I do want to reassure you that we've not cut any staff positions to reach this budget. What we are showing is we are still budgeting for growth in salaries from a cost of living adjustment. We are budgeting for the ability for the Director of Operations and church leadership to adjust salaries as necessary in the course of the year if we feel like we're falling behind market or if some of these responsibilities are growing. We are budgeting an amount for Christmas bonuses at the end of the year. So from a staff perspective, 60% of our expenses largely kind of staying the course in terms of the people that we have on board and the work that they're doing. In terms of other expenses, the other 40% of the budget, this is where I'd say the major differences in this section of the budget are largely around adjustments to better reflect like actual expenses. So when we prepared this budget, we went through kind of line by line in terms of where money's going over the last 12 months and looked to see what adjustments do we need to make. Our insurance bills have gone up a little bit. Our utilities bills have gone up a little bit. There's some changes we want to make in terms of services that the church is taking from outside groups that we want to actually try to move in the other direction to try to bring balance. So we carefully studied all the line items that contribute to what it costs to run Plymouth, and in making some of those adjustments, we tried to bring the budget into line with what it truly does, what our current experience is showing it costs to run Plymouth. We also did make some adjustments in the funding for the building. We've been, in addition to not doing capital projects for the last several years, we've been trying to stay tight, restrained, restricted, you could say. All those are probably fair words in terms of what it takes to maintain the building. And we recognize that does come with a cost. If we don't repair a small pothole on the parking lot when we first notice it, it's certainly not going to fix itself. It's just going to grow over time. And so there is a significant, there's some significant growth in the budget this year to try to reach what the Facilities Management Committee recommends as the right amount of spending to keep up with the needs of the building. And that covers everything from all the exterior surfaces of the building, keeping them waterproof and watertight. It covers the mechanicals that help us help keep the lights on, keep the elevators running, keep the heat and the cooling operational, as well as other elements of the building. So those are the major kind of elements on the operating budget. Stepping forward into the capital budget, this is also an area, as I mentioned, very heavily influenced by the work of the Facilities Management Committee. They looked at a multi-year plan, so not just what does it look like this year, but they looked at what is it going to take, what do they foresee over the next several years, and what projects are really priority, right? What's urgent and important. And so the proposed capital budget is $412,500 this year. The bulk of that budget comes from replacement of a very aged boiler in the oldest portion of the building. So it's a big project. Unfortunately, it's not going to be something that's going to be showy like a new wing or a new stained glass window, but it is an essential element to keeping the building usable all year long, to keeping the building habitable. And it's the kind of thing where if we don't choose to replace it, someday it will break in a way that's going to be difficult or impossible to fix. And so the Facilities Management Committee is recommending that we tackle that on our terms as opposed to nature's terms. There's also significant budget in the capital projects for the safety and security elements of the building. Rick was mentioning what happens when equipment wears out or gets aged. We have some of those kinds of elements at play in the camera systems and the security systems that keep the building safe. And so there is some significant budget in this capital projects for replacement of the equipment that records the videos, for placing of new cameras that help give our security team better lines of sight where they can't see things right now, and keeping that modern and usable and addressing the needs of the church and the neighborhood. There's also some projects to keep up to date with keep carpets in good shape, which is important not only for appearances but also for safety, to keep our commercial kitchen functional, and to deal with some other kind of exterior needs, again, for kind of lighting, security, and usability of the space. So all told, the capital budget, the capital budget of kind of planned projects funded from balances is $412,000. There's another amount that I'm going to mention real quick because it's Plymouth as a facility suffered from the hailstorm that passed through 2.5 years ago now, roughly. And our insurance paid a claim for about $700,000 in repairs to the roof. That money is sitting within our investments right now. It is going to be used to pay for what it's intended to pay for. Honestly, I don't know whether that counts as a capital project or not, but I felt it was better to kind of to share that with you so that you're aware that you will see some significant changes on the building underway. And maybe the one difference is that $700,000 claim was a claim intended to pay for that purpose versus $400,000 from our reserves going to other projects that are necessary, again, to maintain the facility. So that's my apologies. That's probably not that brief from some perspectives, maybe too brief from others. But I'll say at the moment, I think we're in kind of a question and answer period. So if there's some specific questions people have about either of the budgets or any other figures, we have microphones here up front. I would encourage you to adjust the mics because they are pointing to the sky right now. But I would invite you as well when you ask a question, if you could just introduce yourselves to us and say your name.
It's got to be pointed at the sky.
That might be why I was pointing up.
Okay, how's that? Excuse me. I'm Bonnie Yanda, a member, and I am in awe of the work you've done on this, Mike. Yes. And I know Rick and the both boards, the Board of Finance and Administration and the deacons have participated. I went to one of the budget meetings and I wanted to go to the other, but it got preempted in my life by a training related to the ICE tragedy. Okay, my question is on the expense side. For one thing, I thought we were going to cut expenses, so I'm kind of scratching my head about that. And on my question is about what is included in the clergy line item. We've gone down from 3 full-time clergy to 1 interim minister. There's a I can't do the math, $45,000 reduction in that line. And the unallocated salary, I learned, was Christmas bonus and some additional COLA, and that one goes up $35,000. So why don't we have a lower expenses related to clergy?
So the expenses related to clergy are largely coming from the months of salary within the course of the calendar year. So in 25, which is the year recently completed and what we had budgeted here, for I'll say the majority of the year, we still only had 1 clergy. So we had more clergy at the beginning of the year, and then we dropped, there was kind of a step down in the number of clergy through the course of the year. One other thing that I'll mention is there was a recommendation made by the Facilities Management Committee, by the Human Resources Committee, and adopted by the deacons to adjust our JT's salary on the basis of his current responsibilities. And what I mean by that is when we hired JT, when we extended the offer to JT, it was to focus on interim ministry in the context of I think at least at that time, it was at least a 2 or 3 person clergy team. Since then, JT's stepped forward and become the interim minister and acting lead minister, basically carrying quite a significant uptick in clergy duties compared to what was there before. So there was a recognition in that recommendation to both compensate or appreciate the greater responsibilities JT was taking on. And there was a recognition that Plymouth, for many years, has not lived into the guidelines from the UCC that we aspire to in terms of clergy compensation. The deacons could probably talk to you individually about, over time, we've realized that like we've been underpaying in the market for the clergy we've had. And so one of the recommendations was, in order to better prepare for what comes next, when JT does step away, Plymouth should try to get used to compensating clergy closer or on market.
So are there any salaries included in that clergy line besides JT?
I don't think there's any salaries. I think there's some other like related expenses, but that should be, so salary is a little bit, yes, I think the summary is, that should just be the clergy costs now. Other questions?
Hi, I'm Cindy Whitaker. I just have a question about the building, the capital, the $412,000. I understood you to say that there is a fund out of which it comes?
So Plymouth has so collectively we talk about the commingled investments.
Yep.
That's about $7.5 million as of September. It's gone up significantly since then because of a gift we received that was received in late December. Within that $7.5 million, there's roughly a couple of dozen different specific funds. Some of them are restricted for designated purposes. Some of them are called board designated. We have a board designated fund that we set aside, that we created a couple of years ago, initially seeded with about $1 million in kind of, but just by moving dollars from one place to another. That also happens to be where the insurance proceeds are sitting. So that we call it the capital building fund. That is what will decrement when we pay for these capital projects.
So after we do that, there should still be $600,000 there or so?
In that particular fund.
Okay.
And BOFA has also taken some steps. There's been some other receipts that BOFA has designated to try to use to start to try to maintain that, or so that it doesn't just go down.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any other questions. Should I make a motion?
Yeah, but don't say there were no meetings, there was no materials distributed. Just in advance, okay? So now we'll invite Mike to make a motion.
I forgot which page I jotted that down on.
Here. Right here. Okay.
So I move that we adopt the operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 2026 as presented in the materials distributed in advance of the meeting.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I want you to stay close by. Now we will move to the point on the agenda for discussion and comments. And again, if you'd please come forward and use the microphone and identify yourself.
Sky. I will speak from this one. My name's Dana Chabot.
It's not on.
My name's Dana Chabot. I've been a member for 5 years. And in that time, I don't recall the congregation ever having a congregational discussion about the building and its place in our vision for the community. We're looking at spending around $600,000 between the two budgets on building projects this year, like just described. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. I've heard that it will probably cost us several $1 million to handle all the difficulties that we're being confronted with in the mechanicals. And that will probably consume most of our savings, so we might just lay them out. And maybe that's what we want to do, but we haven't had the discussion. And it seems to me that the decision to move down this road is putting us on the edge of a slippery slope. And if we don't have the discussion now, it's just going to get harder and harder to have it the more we pour into repairing the mechanicals. And I'm just not comfortable with that. I think we need to have a discussion now, soon. to decide just how much, what our priorities are, how much of our resources do we really want to put into the building as opposed to other things. JT constantly reminds us about the connection between mission and margin. We're sitting on a square block of pretty valuable urban real estate here. We've started to have discussions over the last few years about how we can be a good neighbor to the people living right around us. Potentially, this square block could provide housing, low-income housing for a number of people, and commercial and retail space that could be used by this community. It potentially could be that the way that we could be the best neighbor that we can be to our neighborhood is either not to be here anymore, as strange as that sounds, or to relinquish some control over our property. And that, I mean, these are the kinds of things that we should be talking about before we start spending a ton of money on the building. I'll go ahead and vote for the budget, but I hope before we spend a ton of this money, we at least start to think about having these discussions.
Thank you, Dana. JT.
So I'm JT. I'm not a member of this church, but I've been here since March. And I'm following up, Dana, on your comment because it's a really important one. And what I'm seeing emerging, and there'll be a time in February where we're going to have a forum time to talk about the interim, but what I'm seeing, because the finances were a bit of a surprise to me and I realized I really needed to lean in, what I'm seeing through work with BOFA and the 5-year plan work group is that this discussion will be important, but we're coming into a 2-stage process here, which is emerging. And the first one has to do with following through to get this annual budget stabilized. And that's happening. That is to say, we've met that 10% mark. Next year we'll meet 6%. We'll keep going. In 28, you will all arrive without me at 4%. And the second stage, so we're doing that and we're working to change revenues and get more building partners. But the second stage is kind of what Dana's talking about. That is to say, what are the bigger long-term things that can happen maybe with the block? The kinds of projects that might take years. And so we are intending on engaging a consultant. Actually, the preliminary meeting is this month. Someone who works in the area of real estate and churches and development, because many churches are doing big things because of the nature of their property and where they're at. The short story is a church that I used to serve, I've shared this with others, sold its building, but they were in a different, that I used to serve in Denver, sold its building, is now renting a space, but they were in a different situation. The place where they were was quite valuable in Denver real estate, and they're a small church, so the relative amount of revenue from the building compared to their annual budget was tremendous. We're not in that place. This real estate has value, but it might not be as valuable as you think. Commercial real estate right now is quite depressed. And so these are the kinds of data points that you're talking about, I think, Dana, that do need to get discussed, and I hope that will happen in this second stage. That is the thing we're beginning, and it will continue after I leave. But it is something to think about. This place went up in the early part of the 20th century in a different time. And so we're doing the small things that get us stabilized, and then with your next lead minister, this discussion that we're beginning this month will come into more mature stages where you can look at what are the possibilities long-term to meet what Dana is talking about. If that much investment is made in this building, what effect does that have long-term, and what are we going to do? So thank you for allowing this extra time, but it does give context, thank you, Dana, to a bigger picture coming back then to this 1-year short-term picture. That is what you'll be looking at in the future. How do we think even bigger and dream even bigger, be creative at a bigger level? We'll take care of the small thing while I'm here, get that, it's already happening, get that stabilized, and then you all will be in a place to think bigger.
Thank you, JT.
So Annette Atkins, I'm wondering, in light of this, can we separate the capital budget from the operating budget, approve the operating budget today, and leave the capital budget until we have that discussion? Or what are the consequences, Mike, of doing that?
So my recommendation, I'll say my hope and recommendation is that we proceed as I moved earlier, that we proceed to approve both the capital and the operating budget. My thought process there is that, again, we've gotten out of the habit of doing some of these big projects, and I'm concerned that if we stay out of that habit, it's not going to get any better. And so I feel like the amount that we're talking about in this budget, it is consistent with the modeling that the 5-year plan working group has been thinking about. It's higher this year than in some of the subsequent years, but some of the subsequent years we've heard are likely to be lower than was originally projected. So I don't think we're making any undue or ill-advised investments in this particular year. So I think it is still. It's good. I would recommend that we would proceed as proposed, acknowledging that there's work to do in the subsequent years.
Yeah, just want to echo what Mike said about what's scheduled for the capital campaign. These are things that need to be done now. It's short term, it protects the building, it gives you a chance to get to that next discussion. Otherwise, once again, the pothole that just gets bigger and it gets worse and will cost more down the road. So I'd recommend you go ahead. Thank you for that creative thinking, and that it's always, these things are worthy of consideration, but I'd recommend you go ahead and do both, and that puts you in a good position for the next stage.
Our parliamentarian tells me that I should invite Dana or Annette to make a motion to amend the budget to separate them, if you're so inclined. No? Thank you. Well, now we will move. I will call the question and ask for all those who are in favor of approving the 2026 budget for Plymouth Congregational Church, which includes both the operating budget and the capital budget. Please say aye if you agree. All those, any opposed, please say nay. The motion carries. Thank you very much. St. Mike. Do you have any closing remarks now that you've been sainted?
I'll just say that thank you. We'll get to work. As mentioned, the Board of Finance and Administration is dutifully studying these numbers month over month. We're working on getting better about how we communicate them, updates on them to everybody involved, everybody that's interested, and thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting before JT offers a closing prayer? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. The motion carries. JT.
As this morning's worship so importantly reminded us, what we do here matters. How we are in the world matters. And the ministry of budgeting, and I've tried to tell this to the Board of Finance Administration, you're in ministry together, is super important to support those efforts. So what we've done today does matter, and thank you for your time and attention to it. Spirit, send us out as people of faith, believing in the power of life, believing in another way, believing in the sacred presence, the sacred resistance, if need be, to what is, so that what God dreams of might be ever more fully on this earth. Send us forth now in that faith. Amen.
Well, nice knowing everybody.